Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to dive deep into Britpop.
Yeah, Britpop. It's really more than just music.
Right, it's a whole cultural moment. So how do we even start to unpack this?
Well, picture this. Early 90s Britain, grunge is huge GE, right? But over in the UK,
Yeah, something else is brewing.
exactly. It was a kind of reaction against the whole grunge scene. But it was also very British.
Totally, like a celebration of Britishness. And that's where bands like Oasis, Blur, Pulp, Suede,
Yeah.
they all come in.
Those are the big names. And it resonated with people because it wasn't just about the music, it was a whole vibe.
Speaking of the music, I got to say, Britpop just sounds, well, big.
Oh, yeah. You've got those jangly guitars, catchy melodies, but then the lyrics, they could get pretty deep.
It wasn't just surface stuff, like take Pulp's Common People. Such a good example. It's literally about class, about social stuff. It's like Jarvis Cocker tapped into something real.
It's amazing how music can do that.
Right.
But it wasn't all working class narratives.
Oh, right. Like you have Blur, they were totally coming from a different angle.
Or that art school background.
Just so everyone knows, art school in the UK is a big deal. It's not just like learning to paint. It represents a certain, well, it's a breeding ground for creativity.
Right? It's almost like a counterculture thing.
Totally. And Blur really challenged conventions.
Okay.
Both musically and just their whole attitude.
And that clash of styles, especially between Oasis and Blur.
Yeah.
Well, it's legendary.
Yeah, it wasn't just about like who sounded better.
Yeah.
It tapped into this whole other level of like what was happening in Britain back then.
Right. Like you had Oasis, the Manchester lads, and Blur, the art school kids from London. It was practically a tale of two cities.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the music press, like the whole country was kind of swept up in it.
Oh, totally. I mean, remember that whole Battle of the Bands thing in '95?
Oh man, 95. That was crazy. Releasing singles on the same day, like come on.
Oasis had Roll With It. Blur had Country House. It was huge E.
Yeah, Blur got the #1 that week, but
But Oasis had that monster album, What's the Story? Morning Glory.
totally. So like who really won that battle? It was more than just sales.
It was symbolic, right? Like this whole clash of cultures, North versus South.
Exactly. And I mean, this could blow your mind.
Right.
Liam and Noel from Oasis
Mhm.
and Damon from Blur. They're cool now.
Get that out. Are you serious?
Totally. They've even talked about maybe like making music together.
Wow. Okay, so as huge as the Oasis Blur thing was, Britpop was about way more than just those two bands, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It went way beyond the music. Like the whole 90s fashion scene, Britpop was right there.
So true. It was like mod style, but like updated for the 90s.
And the art, too. This was the time of the young British artists, right? There was a real energy in the air. It was about more than just music.
Right, it was a movement.
Yeah.
And speaking of the music, there were so many other amazing bands making waves.
Oh, yeah. Like Supergrass, all right, is still an anthem.
Totally. And Elastica with
Wow.
Justine Frischmann, they were so cool.
Don't forget the Verve, Urban Hymns, that's a class.
Oh, for sure. The Verves were interesting. They were Britpop, but they also had this other dimension, like something a little deeper?
Totally. Like a bit more melancholy. It just go to show you how diverse the whole Britpop thing actually was.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about sounding a certain way. It was a feeling?
Yeah. A whole attitude. Okay, but let's talk legacy. Because Britpop's influence, it didn't just disappear.
It's like Britpop planted a seed, right? And it grew into all these other bands and sounds.
Totally. You can hear it in so many artists today. Like, take Arctic Monkeys.
Yeah.
They've got that Britpop energy for sure.
That's such a good point. That raw, energetic sound, it's definitely there. And lyrically, too. They're sharp, witty.
It's that attitude, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can be smart and catchy. You can be thoughtful and still have a blast.
Exactly. And that's why I think Britpop still matters today. It reminds us that music can be like this powerful force. It reflects culture.
Yeah.
It shapes culture.
It sparks conversations, It makes you think.
Totally. And on that note, let me throw one last question out there before we wrap up. If you could hop in a time machine, go back to the peak of Britpop, and catch one show, who would you see?
Oh, man. That's tough. There were so many amazing bands doing their thing.
Right. It's almost impossible to choose. But hey, that's the beauty of Britpop. It left us with a legacy of incredible music that still sounds fresh today.
Absolutely. And on that note, it's been a blast diving into Britpop with you.
Likewise. Until next time, keep those Britpop vibes alive.